Welcome to A Well Cared For Human, the podcast that tries to convince you that you are 100% normal and an even better than okay example of the human species, despite the fact that sometimes we feel like the craziest, most incapable, or worthless creatures on the face of this planet. I'm Kory, an author, a creative, and the host of the show. Whatever you're bringing to the table today, I hope this episode proves to be a dose of inspiration for you on your quest to become a well-cared-for human. You can find the episode show notes, your free wellness blueprint, and more at awellcaredforhuman.com. And as always, thank you for listening. Hello humans, it's your host Kory, and today we're going to talk about disruption. But before we do that, as you can see, I have a new setup. If you're watching this on YouTube or in the Patreon, you can tell that I have changed my background. First of all, it's in video. Usually I do an audio-only podcast episode, but someone in the Patreon had emailed me and requested that I do a video version, that it was something that they were wishing would be part of the bonuses, and I thought, why not? Give it a try. And so that's why we now have it in the video version. The background is my wife's bookcases because hers look much prettier and more organized than the bookcases in my office, which are much more functional than aesthetic. Kim works very hard to have a really beautiful aesthetic, whereas I'm always pulling books off, looking at them, shoving them back, and so mine's a little bit more chaotic. So I thought this would be a prettier background for you to look at during today's episode. So if you're wondering what's going on, it's just a video episode. We're going to try it out. I also have a DSLR camera that we can try if the video quality is not so great from my iPhone. Right now, the pairing that I have is my iPhone running to my microphone. And so if that's not awesome in the editing, if it looks like it's too grainy, then I'll try to do the DSLR. If you are listening to this episode on the normal Spotify or Apple or wherever you like to get your podcasts, and you want to see the video, you can go to my YouTube channel. It will be up there for free with everything else. So that's there for you as well. But now back to our topic, disruption. And so what was my inspiration for the idea of disruption? Well, because we got a new dog this week. I don't know if you have been to my Instagram and you saw the pictures of Max, but we adopted a dog. He is probably a collie, border collie specifically, and Australian Shepherd is what they said, mix. And so he has a lot of energy. It's very different than the bread loaf / potato pugs that we're used to raising, Kim and I. But the border collie Aussie mix is very smart. He's very sweet. He's especially sweet with me. He's still warming up to Kim. She's a much more loud person than I am, and so she makes more sudden movements and she makes more noise, and so he's often more startled by that. So he's still warming up to her, but with me, he's already very bonded, very sweet. It could be because I'm the one with the treats. I'm the one who's always spoiling him, and so he might have figured that out pretty quickly, and that's why he's latched onto me. But I love him so much already, and I've only had him for a week. But in getting a new dog, it made me think about the times in our lives when things happen and we get disrupted. And this could be anything. It could be that you got a new dog. It could be that you had a baby or you have started a new job. It really could be anything at all. But what do we do when disruption happens in our lives? Because often it upends our schedule. It throws things into chaos. The things that we're used to doing or that we're used to having no longer work or we can't do them. And I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about how I navigate disruption, because life is full of change. We will always be encountering change, no matter what we do or how perfect we try to get our life. And so if change is a part of it, how can we make the most of those moments when our lives are disrupted? So that's what we're going to look at today. So the first thing I usually try to address is my mindset when it comes to disruption. So I have two choices when my life is disrupted, either by my own choice, like when I got a dog, I knew that was going to change my life. My schedule is going to be different. So either in that way, or because something has happened and we did not willingly participate. The change came whether we wanted it or not. So when we are faced with disruption, we have an option of how we want to look at it, and that's our mindset. So it's easier, of course, to be positive if you agreed to the change. So you agreed to adopt a dog, for example, or you agreed to have this baby, or you agreed to take the new job. It's harder to remain positive if it's a change that's been forced upon you. In both cases, though, as much as you can identify with the positive traits of the change, the better off you'll be. So what do I mean by that? Even though I agreed to adopt Max, and I love him already, sweetest dog in the world. Of course, I'm already biased as his new mom, but sweetest dog in the world. It's still very disruptive to my life, particularly in the area of my sleep. And so I am someone who needs a lot of sleep to function. I'm also a night owl. I'm a very creative person, and like many creative people, well, we're all creative, but people who live creative lives, we tend to be more active in the evenings. At least that's been true for me. So in the evenings, I get a lot of ideas. I want to do a lot of things. And so I'm used to working in a later into the night, and that can be difficult if you have a dog who's going to wake up in the morning and want to be let out of his crate. And so getting Max has disrupted my normal rhythm. I don't get to sleep in the way that I used to, and I also don't get to go to bed at the same time that I used to, so I'm having to adjust. So my well-being routine, which is of course part of the sleep aspect of my life, it has been disrupted. Now, what do I do about that? Obviously, it's hard to be positive if you are sleep deprived, or if you have a dog that's barking in his crate at 11 o'clock and then also again at 7 a.m. That can be a challenge. And so I try to look at the positives in the disruption. The positive in the disruption is I have always wanted to be someone who gets up early. And I know that seems crazy for those of you who are not morning people. You're like, why would you want to get up earlier? I do feel my freshest in the morning, so between 9 and 11. And it would be nice if I was already up and at my desk during that time. And so I'm identifying in this disruption the potential to get something that I've wanted. So that's me identifying a positive trait that's embedded within the disruption. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe this is my opportunity to become a morning person, not one of those crazy morning people who can get up at 4 or 5 a.m. and do the day. I have some friends like that, and I admire them greatly, but that will never be me. For me, getting up at 7:30, 8:30, that is a big deal for me because I like to sleep later than that usually. So I've identified in this disruption the potential to do something I've always wanted to do. So if you can identify the components of your disruption, so you look at the things about it that's changing your life. So getting a dog changes my sleep schedule, changes my daily schedule, changes the way I play out the day. I have to take more breaks to let him out or to walk him. And so I'm looking at how my life is being changed by this disruption event. And you can do the same. Look at how the disruption event has changed the flow of your day or changed what you're doing, and look for opportunities to focus on things that you really want. So for me, it's the earlier schedule. I view that as a benefit because I think I could probably be even more productive if I was someone who could get up at 8 a.m. If you can, look for the positive opportunities within the disruption, embedded within the disruption. Otherwise, you're just going to feel angry. You're just going to wish this wasn't happening. And you might already be struggling with those feelings, again, if this was not a disruption that you chose. And so you'll be working a little bit more with de-escalating the mental anguish, with not getting too worked up by the fact that it's happened. And this is why often we're advised to accept change, to get comfortable with change, because change is inevitable. Usually when we are not accepting change, that's when we are struggling to adapt to it, when we're fighting against it, we don't want it to happen, then our mood is a lot more difficult to regulate. And so I do recommend practicing finding the positive within the disruption if you can. And this is very much like other aspects of shifting your focus. So what I mean by that is, in previous episodes, I've talked about how hypervigilance is always training us to scan the environment for terrible things, looking for the negative, looking for the bad. If you grew up in a really dangerous situation or in a toxic environment, it would have been very natural for you to continuously look to your environment for potential threats in order to keep yourself safe. But now if you are in a healthy environment as an adult, that habit of looking for the bad did not naturally go away just because you were not in a dangerous environment anymore. You have developed this habit of looking for the danger in order to keep yourself safe. So just as we would correct our hypervigilance in this situation where change is uncomfortable, we don't necessarily like what's happening, we're scared about what's going on or what could happen in the future, we still manage those feelings in the same way that we would manage hypervigilance, which is that we gently continue to redirect our energy, our attention. So if you find yourself fixating on all the things you hate about the disruption, just gently turn your attention to the things that you're grateful for, the things that you're lucky that, oh, it's like this and not like this, or the things that you can see as potential positive outcomes from the experience. So just that gentle redirection as much as you can, that will be really beneficial. So again, in my case, that is the opportunity to become an early riser. But then also I've always wanted to have more excuses to spend time outside, which he's allowing me to do. I wanted another dog, so I'm glad that I have the companionship. I've always wanted a dog that was really smart, that's really trainable, which he is. And so all of these things offer opportunities for me. So I'm just trying to focus on that whenever I feel sleep deprived or I don't like that my schedule is different and it's new and maybe I wish I could just stay up till midnight again and not have to get up early to let him out, that kind of thing. And so just focus on the positive, and when you go toward the negative, keep redirecting your attention back. Another thing I recommend to do if you're struggling with disruption is to simplify. So we cannot do the same amount of things in a new environment that we were doing before. So before I had a dog, I was an absolute workhorse. I could do a whole lot of things in a day. I could just sit down at the desk, work all day. It's not great for my chronic back pain, but I could and would do it. Now I have to take more breaks. I have to let him out. I find myself spending more time on his care or generally just being interrupted, distracted by him or his needs. And so if there's something that's happened that now has disrupted your routine, the best thing that you can do in that moment is just simplify. So identify what absolutely needs to be done. There are some things that don't need your attention, or maybe there are some things that could be put on pause for a while. Identify what those items are. What could you put on the back burner for now? Not forever, but just right now until you get used to this change. I've used the metaphor before that it's like when you level up in a video game. So when you first level up, you're dying all over the place because everything's really hard, it's really new, you don't know how to do it. But once you get used to a routine, or you get used to a new environment, or you get used to a big change like having a new dog, you will naturally know how to navigate that better than when you first started. And so when you do that in the beginning, it's easier just to give as much of your time and attention and focus to getting used to the change than trying to carry the whole big load that you had before. So wherever you can, try to simplify, and do it with this idea that you'll come back to it later so that it doesn't create any of these feelings of lack or negativity, like, oh, this change is so terrible, look at everything it's making me give up. Just keep reminding yourself that I can come back to this, I can work on this more later, I just need a little break right now while I get adjusted, while I get things in order. And so try to make it as positive of a shift for yourself as possible. Now, once you've simplified whatever you have left that you need to attend to, whatever the remaining responsibilities or needs that need to be met, now you have the opportunity to prioritize them. And so look at the list and figure out what needs to be done in what order. Because there might be times when you can't do everything that has to get done. That's just a fact of life, or at least it's been true for me. If you're out there succeeding, doing everything that needs to be done every single day, please give me a call or email me and let me know what your magic sauce is, because I would love to have that in my toolkit. But for me, I have to prioritize. I have to think about, well, if I'm only going to get through so many things in a day, what is at the top of the list for me? What is most important? And so I look at my functionality needs, meaning sleep is a big one. For example, I can't really get anything done if I don't have enough sleep. Eating is a big one for me because, again, that's an energy producer. So what are my energy producers? I need the energy to get the things done. So I usually prioritize my energy producers higher on that list. Then I also look at satisfaction or motivation. So for example, what's going to motivate me to keep going? Because I don't want to get discouraged and give up too easily. So after I have prioritized the energy producers, I also look at, I guess we could call it emotional energy. What would motivate me to keep going? What would motivate me to keep investing? And so those would be my second tier priorities. And usually by then that's already a lot of that's already a lot of options. And so I already have 10 or 15 things on the list that will do that for me. But I look at what would be the best use of my time. A couple of years ago, I also took a business class that had a 2x2 square. I forget what the name of this matrix is. I'll have to look it up. But essentially, tasks were divided into 4 categories. There was you needed to do them because they were very important and they were very urgent, meaning there was a time limit to when they could be done. The next square was it was not urgent, but it was very important and needed to be done. The third square was it is not urgent and not very important, meaning that you didn't have to do it. And then the last square was not important and not urgent. So when it comes to prioritization, I would look at marking off not important and not urgent altogether. Anything that falls under that category for you, not important during this moment of change. You can just either never do those tasks again. Maybe this is a great reason to declutter your life, declutter your emotional space, or just tell yourself that you're going to come back to that later when you have more time and more capacity. That second category of it is urgent, it requires attention, but it's not very important to you. I would try to delegate those tasks if you can. It's like things that you need to get done, but you don't have to be the one to do them. So you can hand that off to somebody else if at all possible. The other category is it's important to you, you want it to get done, but there's no urgency. I would put that farther down on the list because you want to do them, but you don't need to prioritize them every day in order to keep going, in order to function. And then I would put the items in that top of the square, the it's important and it's urgent. I would put that toward the top of your list of your to-dos so that you could always make sure that that's getting the most of your attention. Whatever capacity you have left during this time of change, I would focus on that. So energy producing, what do you have to do in order to keep going? Motivation producing, what do you have to keep doing in order to be motivated to do all this work? Then below that, urgent tasks that are important to you, which might also already be covered within the first 2 categories, but if not, that would go in your third space. And then below that, important but not urgent. And then I would forget about the rest. I would either delegate it or mark it off the list altogether because that's already probably a lot of things and your capacity is limited during this time of disruption. So don't wear yourself out. Do not be like me and try to be a super person who does all the things all the time. It's not necessary. You're just going to make yourself crazy. Let's not do that. And so after you prioritize, you simplified, you're prioritizing that, then it's really just about managing your mind and emotions during change because really it is hard to feel like we're making progress when we're making mistakes all over the place. But mistakes, of course, you know this already, but I'm here to remind you, making mistakes is just learning. It's just getting better at things. Whatever it is that feels really unfamiliar to you right now is going to get easier with practice. So just be really patient with yourself. Give yourself a lot of grace. Give yourself a lot of credit for navigating this disruption and change. The challenge level will be different. Again, remember that if it's a change that you chose versus a change that you did not choose, that feels like it was heaped upon you. And so be even more patient and gentle with yourself if this was a disruption that you did not choose. But even if you did choose it, like I chose this dog, when I'm starting to feel very cranky and sleep deprived, I have to remind myself, I wanted this. This was important to me. There are many positives. So just keep speaking well to yourself. Keep reinforcing your decisions. Keep giving yourself credit. It's really important to do that during this time of disruption. And that's it for today, dear human. Thank you for listening to the show. I would love to hear what you thought about the video format. Is it working for you? Is it not working for you? If it is working for you, then we can start looking at making it better, maybe getting out the DSLR, getting that video quality sharper. There's always a trade-off because right now I'm recording in my wife's office when she's not home, so I'm not bothering her, and to get better lighting, but I've got someone over here like working on their house, and then there's the kids playing basketball, my neighbor's kids out in the street, and they're yelling, so maybe the video quality and the audio quality isn't adding up for you and you'd rather I go back to just audio only podcasts. And if that's true, if you feel that the quality is actually worse, not better, I would love to hear from you. You can email me at Kory@KoryMschramm.com, or you can reply in the comments of this episode and let me know how you feel about it. But in either case, I'd love to hear that feedback. And I will be back next week with another episode of A Well Cared For Human. And until then, please take good care of you. This episode of A Well Cared For Human was written and produced by me, Kory Marie. The music was by Late Night Feeler and Esther Abrami. If you like what I'm doing here, please consider visiting my Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you get early ad-free access to the episodes, as well as a monthly patrons-only Q&A, bonus videos, and more. Not to mention that your Patreon support lets me know that you find value in the show and want it to continue. You can find me on Patreon by visiting www.patreon.com/Kory Marie. If you can't support the show financially, that is okay. You can still subscribe to the show, leave a review of the show, and recommend the show to your friends, not just the neurotic ones. All of this helps so much. And as always, thank you for listening.